So in one of my videos, I was talking about how these once saved, always saved sorts will deflect. You know, they'll try to say, well, the people weren't saved. If they fall away, then they were never saved to begin with. Well, they have to say that, right? They have to say that. So one of the boneheads was just chirping at me. I've been blocking them. I told him I am not obligated to convert you. I'm not. It's not my job. I know what the Bible says. It says to basically for people outside the church, I'm to give them the gospel. If they reject it, then I'm to shake the dust off and move along. I have no obligation or requirement to keep pounding you. Period. Those inside the church, what does it say? I believe it's 1 Corinthians, where it talks about somebody living in sin. But it's all the same thing. It's being obstinate and being against the will of God and the life that you're supposed to live in whatever regard. You take them aside, that's the first step, and you try to reason with them. If they don't, then you take them before the church and try to, come together with them as a church and say, hey, this is wrong. You need to. After that, it's excommunication. Now, that doesn't have to be permanent, because if you look at 2 Corinthians, it looks as if the guy that they expelled for living in a sinful lifestyle was allowed back into the church. But until he repented, until he came back and proved that, oh, you are one of us, you were just doing something wrong, you haven't completely walked away from the faith, which he could have. He could have just said, screw that, I like living with my dead father's wife, and so I'm going to keep doing this. Kind of proves that he had basically fallen away. They'll say that, again, they'll say that the person wasn't saved to begin with. That's one of the deflections. And that's usually the biggest one for this group. But what this joker is telling me today, see how this is Hebrews? This is Hebrews 6, right? And this is Hebrews 10, right? Now, that was what I quoted to this clown. Not to him specifically, but he's responding to me on a YouTube channel, right? In the feed. This isn't the only ones that are in there. He's trying to act like, because I use Hebrews 6 or Hebrews 10, that's all there is. So what he says is, that's talking to the Hebrews. Blah, 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 blah. And you're not going to convince me otherwise. Dude! I gave one passage. Are you so unstudied that you think that that's the only passage, Hebrews 10, if I had given him, I think it was Hebrews 10, is you are so uneducated, so unstudied, you think that's the only one? I gave you one. I didn't feel like I needed to post 110 passages from Genesis to Revelation about, hey, if you screw up too bad and walk away from the God of the Bible, you may not be coming back. It's all through there. Anybody that denies that is a fool. So he says, and this was the part where I got, he says, that's to the Hebrews. And then he quotes Philippians says this, and Galatians says that, and Ephesians says that. Dude, did you miss the part where each one of those books was written to a group of believers? Like Hebrews was written to a group of believers? He used Romans. Oh, see what Romans says? Yeah. Romans is a letter written by Paul to the Romans. Hebrews is a letter, we believe, written by Paul to the Hebrews. That's how most of the books are. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, history books. Acts, history book. All the way up to Jude, beyond that, all the way up to like Jude is all letters to somebody. Pretty much all of those after Acts, all the way up to the last book before Revelation, is all like pretty much letters to somebody. Addressed to somebody. So, of course, Romans was written to the Romans and Hebrews was written to the Hebrews. Believing, born again Romans, born again Hebrews. this isn't the reason why I'm laughing is this isn't the first time I've crossed this absurd stupidity. They refute their own argument in the sentence that they say something. They make an argument, and then before they finish their sentence, they've already refuted their own argument. His argument was that, see, it was written to the Hebrews. See what Romans says, see what Colossians says, see what Philippians says, see what Thessalonians says. Yeah, I do. And I note like Hebrews, that those are all written to groups of Christians in whatever area that the letter was sent to. Duh! So when you tell me that Hebrews is written to Hebrews, that's not an argument. It's written to who? What kind of Hebrews? Born again Hebrews. Like 1 Corinthians is written to born again people in Corinth. Ephesians, born again people in Ephesus. Philippians, born again Christians in Philippi. Duh! You don't get to say that this book was written to the Ephesians, therefore it doesn't apply, because if you use that stupidity, none of it applies to anybody today. Because those words were only written back then for those people. You could just say that. That doesn't apply to me. That was written to the Ephesians 2,000 years ago. Duh, doesn't apply to me. This is how it works. You either believe the Bible or you don't. There are passages in Hebrews that cover stuff that might not be anywhere else in the entire New Testament. The same thing with the Gospels. The same thing with Philippians. There may not be some concept that is repeated in every single book of the Bible, or even more than one book, one letter. And so it's kind of all important. You can't just ignore some of it. And I get that some of it, Peter even says some of Paul's teachings are a little complex. And he also says that people abuse them to their own destruction. Let's pull that up. Okay, so I added this up here just to show you. And I want you to see the irony of this. Remember, we're talking about once saved, always saved, and we believe that it's heresy and it's going to get people in trouble, right? Now it says, and think of the long suffering of our Lord of salvation, who, as our beloved brother Paul also has written to you according to the wisdom given to him, as also in all of his letters, speaking in them of these things, in which are some things hard to be understood, which the unlearned and unstable pervert, as they also do the rest of scriptures, to their own destruction. Now, the irony is still coming. To their own destruction. Therefore, knowing beforehand, beware lest being led away with the error of the lawless, and you fall from your own steadfastness. You fall. You fall. Hold on a minute. Let me see what that word means. From, to drop away, specifically to be driven out of one's course. Figuratively, to lose, to become inefficient, to be cast, to fail, to fall. Take no effect, take none effect. I'm not saying that that's talking about necessarily falling away, but don't you find it kind of ironic that we're talking about abusing scriptures and then him warning them about not to fall? Doesn't it seem ironic that we're talking about this? We're talking about Paul. There's stuff in his letters that are hard to understand. We get it. But then we're right back to, hey, don't fall. Don't trip up and don't, but grow in grace. The option here is to fall or to grow in grace and the knowledge of Christ. That's what the options are being offered here. And so when you're looking at once saved, always saved, we tell them, look, there are too many passages against falling away. You've got the ones if you go through the Gospels, I don't even know if I want to list them. Maybe I'll do another video. But if you look at the Gospels, there is plenty of warning in there. If you go clear up to Revelations, be hot or be cold, because you were neither hot nor cold, I'm about to spew you from my mouth. You know, they're talking about the lukewarm Christians. The lukewarm. Maybe that means he's just not happy with them. Maybe that means they don't make it. I don't know. I'm just telling you, if you're basing your life on once saved, always saved, and you think that God is indebted to you somehow, that I said that little prayer one day. I said that prayer, and when I said it, God has to let me in now. He ain't got no choice. If that's what you're relying on, something tells me you're going to be like Ahab. It is a fearful thing to fall in the hands of a living God. And you know, like I said, what they'll tell you, and I just had one of them tell me today, well, they weren't really saved. That's not talking about saved people. They weren't really saved. Sanctified. How much worse punishment do you think will be deserved? Worse punishment. Worse punishment. Not just the regular punishment. We're talking about a worse punishment. Trampled underfoot the Son of God, and has profaned the blood of the covenant by which he was sanctified. Sanctified, to make holy. These people are telling you, and they'll say, the one guy told me that sanctified, it means he was sanctified. Jesus was sanctified. It was Jesus' blood that we're talking about. Talk about somebody that can prove to you. It's like, you hear this saying, tell me you don't know what you're talking about without telling me you don't know what you're talking about. This dude told me that the sanctified there was talking about Christ. No, this is talking about the person who was sanctified by the blood. Jesus' blood didn't need to sanctify Jesus. But that's what this guy's telling me. And then I'm banging my head on the table like, this is why I don't even bother anymore trying to teach you all. This is why I don't bother trying to help you all, because you just want to be obstinate like the Jews. And this is why Paul said, I wash my hands of you, and I'm going to the Gentiles from now on. I can't take it anymore. Let Peter deal with you. And that's why it says that, Peter was the apostle to the Jew, and Paul is to the Gentile, because Paul had enough of their obstinance. They will twist and mangle Hebrews 10, Hebrews 6, and any other passage they have to distort, twist, pervert. All false teachers do this. All of them. Not just once saved, always saved. And you have to understand the reason why I'm harping on this so much is because I grew up in it. My mom is once saved, always saved. Everybody in my house thinks that they're saved, and you couldn't pick a Christian out of the bunch of them. Now, I'm by no means not a sinner, but I acknowledge it. They won't even acknowledge it. They pretend like they're good and holy and on their way because God owes them something. I don't think that at all. I understand how this works. I understand that there can come a point where you have literally apostatized yourself. It's not an accident. It's not something you do accidentally. It's something you do intentionally. Like the Hebrews were doing. You just get up, pack your bags, and walk away from it. Don't do that. Once saved, always saved is crap. Don't buy it. That was meant for an encouragement, not a guarantee. Y'all have a great day.